Guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Friday, November 28th, 2025, and today we are going to be talking about Speaker Mike Johnson and the Republicans and Donald Trump across the country now panicking as multiple states turn away from their redistricting efforts in states like Indiana, Utah, Kansas, and so on and so forth, as the Republicans begin to realize that the 2026 midterms aren't going to look as good for them as they thought otherwise. Donald Trump knew that going into this administration that it would be difficult to maintain the already slim House majority that Republicans currently take hold of. Now, on the national level, it has been only getting worse. The numbers in terms of Donald Trump's approval have reached a record low today, and looking at the generic ballot, Democrats are also at their highest point on average that they've seen in quite some time. And it's a real stark contrast with the beginning of this administration. On the day that Donald Trump was inaugurated, Republicans led on the national popular vote by roughly 5 points, and his approval was above water by roughly 12. And it shows that as the time has gone on, the American public has turned away from the decisions that this president has made. And with it, the chances of electability for the Republican Party have depleted tremendously. Now, rather than face the same thing they did in 2018, after Republicans lost 40 seats to the Democrats between 2 years of 2016 and 2018, they instead decided to go about the 2026 midterms by substantively changing the math and the trajectory here by changing individual congressional districts in a multitude of states. Now, on your screen right now is the exact House composition as it stands today. Democrats are at 215, Republicans are at 220, and the number necessary for a majority is 218. In theory, off the 2024 map, Democrats would need to gain just 3 seats. Not an impossible task, and it could be done just by shifting the national numbers here by roughly 2 points. Boom over there to the Democrats, and they have a majority as substantive, if not slightly larger, than what the Republicans have today. But Donald Trump knew that it wouldn't take much to take this House map, because even in that 2-point shift, Republicans still win the national popular vote, but Democrats still win House control. And so he went to states like Texas. That's where it began, where he asked the state legislature to draw him a new map. He told them, give me 5 additional seats across the board here to help cushion what might be an inevitable loss across a number of other states in 2026. And they willingly obliged. We saw the governor sign into law a brand new map here that took the numbers here from 13 down to 8 across Texas. And Republicans continued on their tirade. They went to Missouri. They got rid of Missouri's 5th. They went to North Carolina. They got rid of North Carolina's 1st. They turned these districts into solid red districts, with Democrats having a 0% chance at winning practically any of them. In Texas, it might revert if their numbers and projections are inaccurate. But besides that, really, most of these districts, if not all of them, will be quite solid for the GOP. But Republicans would like to have their way in more ways than one. In Indiana right now, they're in the midst of trying to convince the legislators to change that Indiana 1st district. They've resisted thus far. Now Mike Johnson is meeting with them directly after J.D. Vance has tried, and so has Donald Trump. And taking a look at just other states too, in Ohio, they drew out Marcy Kaptur's district to be even more solid in favor of the GOP. They decided that that was going to be the most they were going to do. In Florida, we have a pending redraw set to take place, likely to get rid of Democrats having 3 or 4 seats across the state here. The reason I bring it up is to say, if Republicans were given their way on the national stage and Democrats had never retaliated, the House map wouldn't look like this. Instead, it would look like this, with Republicans at 235 seats and the Democrats at 200. Now, this would be with the same exact sitting representatives as, 2024, except Democrats are losing 15 seats, and that majority for the GOP looks far similar to what it was in 2016 rather than what it looks like today. Meaning the possibility of Democrats winning House control would still be pretty high, but it would be a lot more difficult than having to win just 3 seats instead of winning 15 seats, if not more, because on this map, you'd need to win at least 18. And as we see here, Florida would have had 3 more seats. North Carolina, Missouri, Texas are all counted in. And this doesn't count California's Proposition 50 or the new map in Utah that now we are seeing the Governor Spencer Cox looking to court pack the Utah Supreme Court out of fear of potentially shooting down the Republican Party's appeal of the new map here. The point is, though, this is what the Republicans wanted. And this is what I'm sure was on Donald Trump's vision board, his Pinterest board, as he was saving the pins of just red. And looking at the map, this is what they thought they were going to get. Now, obviously, Democrats resisted, right? That's not the map they were going to work with. In no real consideration did they ever see it as something that would be fair, even if this was what was happening. And so Democrats, of course, counteracted. They went to other states, too. If we actually take a look at where they moved over, right? They have a seat now in Utah. They, have 5 seats out in California. That becomes a bluer state. And so you start to see it whittling back, right, in favor of the Democrats. They're set to do a statewide vote in Virginia. The Senate pro tempore indicates that they want to go for 4 seats from the GOP. And so the numbers here start to whittle their way back in favor of the Democratic Party. But even again, remember that Republicans are still pursuing redraws in Indiana. They're still pursuing redraws in Florida. They're still pursuing redraws in Kansas. And as they start to lose these battles, you start to see how these numbers whittle away. Because in the best case scenario now, assuming, Democrats, let's say, will take away Virginia, let's say that fails, and Republicans hold on to it, Democrats are still up more seats than they thought at initial investigation or initial glance. And then now you see that Virginia could very well pass this too. The way Prop 50 outperformed Harris by 10, chances are Virginia's proposition will as well and pass easily across the legislature. That brings Democrats to 210. And then you see here now that right now Republicans want a 9-0 map in Indiana. Mike Braun, the governor, has already indicated that is the map they will go for if given the opportunity. They will draw out every single Democratic district in the state of Indiana. But as the Republicans are pushing back against Mike Johnson, pushing back against Trump, pushing back against J.D. Vance, and even their own governor, if that fails, which it could very well fail, those are 2 more seats added back in favor of the Democratic Party. And then in Kansas, now the Republican lawmakers are resisting. Donald Trump is trying to build back up the efforts to get the Kansas Republicans back on his side. But they don't want to be. He continues to suffer these losses, right? Kansas could throw that district back in favor of the Democratic Party. And now you see the Democrats are back to 213. There are only 2 seats less on the net, throwing in Florida, which hasn't happened yet, throwing in an assumed pickup in Ohio, which is not guaranteed. There's a real possibility that Democrats come out net even, maybe even on top, because of this redistricting battle that Republicans started in the first place. And looking at what we've been seeing in a lot of these states is consistent losses for the GOP. And now they're full on crashing out. In Indiana, they're sending in the Speaker of the House of Representatives because the vice president couldn't get it done. Donald Trump is on Truth Social threatening these members of the state of Indiana. We can find it here, where he is telling them that if they do not pass the new maps, they are going to be targeted in the primary and even really personally. We've seen that members of these Indiana, family members, their homes have been swatted because people are so angry that they won't pass a gerrymander that they are calling in SWAT hits on these members. Donald Trump himself is going publicly and saying, we need new Republicans because you're opposing redistricting. In the grand scheme of things, Indiana giving Republicans 2 more seats doesn't really matter. And if Donald Trump, was to really fight on a hill and lose the battle, it would be not this, because it didn't really make all that sense. But Indiana's not the only state resisting, right? In Utah, that's something completely out of their control. But Democrats are coming ahead. In the state of Ohio, Republicans met a compromise with the Democrats. Obviously, Trump and the Republicans were furious. They have the backing of the Ohio Supreme Court. They control everything of the state. They have a supermajority, and yet the Democrats convinced the Republicans to maintain the 4 seats, potentially 5, depending on the year. That's at most a gain or 2 for the GOP when they were supposed to be guaranteed 3 and give Democrats maybe 2 seats in Ohio, maybe just 1. Now, Democrats could have 4 to 5. And in Indiana, it's falling through because the Republicans are pushing back. In Missouri, there's a citizens-led referendum that could very well gather the signatures in time to prohibit the map from being implemented in 2026. In Kansas, the Republicans are pushing back. The only real states that Trump got through to 100%, no challenge, we just saw North Carolina and Texas, are those 2 states. Missouri could see a challenge. Indiana seeing one now from the members of his own party. And that's where you see this immense frustration. Because Trump had this vision of red, red, red. And remember, right, that red map still would not have saved them from what the 2018 wave was going to do. But the conventional wisdom has been that Democrats are going to do worse than 2018. So maybe they were thinking it could have saved the GOP. And I'm sure when Trump, wrote up this plan, when we saw this conversation point even being had was in July. Well, Republicans only lost to Democrats nationally by about 2 points. And even after the initial conversations were being had, the margin had narrowed to about 1. It was reasonable to believe that if Republicans got to a point of 235 seats on the national stage, which again, remember, when you look at this, it would be actually impossible for Democrats to have as many gains as they did in 2018 because the map wouldn't have been conducive for it, right? A lot of these states would have found themselves, sure, Democrats could have gained in some of these other districts, but again, as a reminder of how difficult it would have been, I can just show you on the map here. Remember that, I'm going to throw back all these seats in favor of the GOP to show you what Trump and his party had initially wanted and saw as the best case scenario for them, right? As something that was going to give them the 230 seats that they had. I think I might be forgetting one in one of these states. Hopefully not. It might be one of these districts in Virginia. But the point is that this is the math they were working with. They wanted 235. Democrats would have never had their Prop 50, and the numbers would have looked like this. Now, remember that, it took a 2-point shift on this map to give Democrats that majority. Look at what happens if you shift the map here by 2. Democrats, instead of going from the majority, only get about 206 seats. Only about 206 seats nationwide. So what would have been a majority on the existing map under their tabulations would have given Republicans a majority even larger than what they have right now. And let's continue. Plus 3-point shift, 4-point shift, 5-point shift. Democrats still don't win the House majority. For context again of what that looks like on this map, a 5-point shift looks like this. Democrats 5 seats shy of where they were in 2018. Meanwhile, on Trump's map, Democrats are still short of the majority. 1 more point, then 1 more. It takes a 7-point swing nationally and a 5-point Democratic popular vote victory for Democrats to have the narrowest House majority they've had in decades. 219 to 216. Then you shift it over, and I'm doing this for a reason. 3 more points. What happens? This is the exact popular vote margin that Democrats won by in 2018. But what map does it give you? Democrats at 222 and Republicans at 213. A majority that only rivals that of Democrats in 2020 when they won nationally on the popular vote in the House by roughly 2. The gerrymander would have been effective. Democrats still would have won that House majority, but winning nationally by 8 and translating to 222 seats, it would not have been a blue wave, at least not in terms of who was getting elected to Congress. And it would take to get Democrats to the point that this, again, if we were to get Democrats to that point of what it was in 2018, the map would be 236, not 222. But to get Democrats there, you have to get to a 9-point popular vote victory, 10 points, 11 points, 12 points, and there you're at it. And even then, you're not there. You need 13 points to get it to that point, and then all of a sudden, wait, these Republican seats go down, but the Democrats are at 239. And that just shows what it is, right? That is just absolutely insane to think about. You would need that 13, 14-point national popular vote victory, which hasn't happened since, 1970-something, right? 1974, I think, is the last time the popular vote margin was roughly around that. It wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't happen. It would not happen, and it goes to show why the Republicans now are so furious about it. They're trying to court pack in Utah. They're sending the speaker to Indiana. They're trying to relaunch it in Kansas. They're threatening the members in the Indiana State Senate. This is getting far. And it is because the president is seeing the plan that he had, his, Project 2026 or whatever they've dubbed it on conservative Twitter to fully redraw the map here to give them a victory. But what they didn't expect was court losses in a number of these states. What they didn't expect was Democrats fighting fire with fire. What they didn't expect was a Republican Party in some of these states with a moral compass that acknowledges their party started this battle. They could end up losing it because of this continued tirade against the will of the voters. And they are saying at their core, they cannot in good conscience contribute to a problem that their party began in this cycle. And Trump and Johnson and Vance are furious because it throws a wrench in their plans. A wrench in their plans is the better way to put it. And they see it as a threat because, again, Trump would not just be crashing out over Indiana individually. If every other state had greenlit it, they would cut their losses. Seriously. But it's not just Indiana. It's becoming a more unified front from the GOP, whether it's on a judicial front, on a state legislative front, on a gubernatorial front, whatever it is. The pushback against Trump has become immense. And it has become difficult for an unpopular president to try to twist the arms of these members who some aren't running for re-election, some don't gaffe. It doesn't matter to them, but it matters everything to Trump because it really could limit the progress. And I say progress loosely because it depends on how you define it. But certainly this administration has made progress on what they planned to do, right? The Heritage Foundation wrote out the policy platform. It was there. This is an open book exam. Every election is. And they knew what they wanted to do. And that's what started with the quote-unquote big, beautiful bill. That's what started with all of these different things, these appointments Trump is making, who's in his cabinet, the confirmations that got through on the narrowest of votes but got through anyway. And it is that shows you that as it stands presently, the Republican Party very clearly had a different vision for how the midterms would go because they thought they would be the ones writing the rules. And now we see that there is complete pushback against it in a multitude of states that you never would have seen coming. Red states that voted for Trump by 20. Red districts with incumbent reps and senators in the state legislature who oppose it in Trump plus 40 districts because on a moral basis, they cannot contribute to this problem. And it's been interesting. And I do think that we will see a continued crash out from the White House, from the Speaker's office, because this is what makes them angry. Not being able to exert their will and authority over voters, because those voters want to vote them out. And rather than reconcile with that and change their policy, change their approach, change their strategy, as any good politician traditionally would, they instead are not just doubling down on it, they are refusing to allow these voters who are discontent to even have any say in it by drawing them out of the competitive district in the first place and forcing them into a ruby red district because they know that is the only way they can win. Because they use the same maps and math that we have, and they know that it would take the moving of mountains to get Democrats to a House majority on their map. That would take them just a few points in the advantage on the current one. And that is why they're so angry, and that is why they're so desperate to pass these maps. But chances are, Republicans won't get their way. And as Democrats continue to fight fire with fire, you will find that this will only continue to hinder the Republican Party and Donald Trump's ability at changing the midterm elections before they begin. And that is why you see Democrats in Virginia, in Maryland, and Illinois openly considering this redraw and a new map because they know that is what is necessary to get this to be a total and national, come to realization moment that gerrymandering is only going to continue to harm both parties. And as it stands right now, we've seen this anger from Trump. We will likely see it continue, but chances are it won't change much because they've already felt his wrath. They've felt the threats. They've seen what he's willing to do and why he's willing to do it. But it doesn't really change how they're understanding their vote, their conscience, what they're doing. We might see some things move. But as it stands today, Democrats are in a much better position, having fought back in many of these states, and Republicans very clearly are seeing that even members of their own party are starting to turn on Donald Trump, especially as he faces record low popularity on the national stage, his lowest point of his second term, with no signs of improvement. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video for you to watch, then a playlist for my 2026 House election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.